Good morning, welcome back. This is Daybreak on Citizen Television. Thank you for staying with us here on the broadcast. The hashtag on Twitter is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir and at Safin_Achieng. Towards the tail end of this broadcast, we'll sample your feedback here on Daybreak. And with me in studio is the Member of Parliament representing Navaholo constituency, with us in studio, and his counterpart from the constituency of Gatanga. Gentlemen, your time is all appreciated. And here to talk about some of the million-dollar questions that were raised as a result of the finance bill and the proposals contained therein in regards to what yesterday transpired in Parliament, and coming against the backdrop of mounting economic challenges and a time when Kenyans are concerned about the high cost of living in the country. Emmanuel Wangwe and George Morio, thank you for your time. All appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And coming to you first, Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe, and looking at the papers this morning, the Finance and National Planning Committee proposed the retention of the turnover tax threshold, but also cut the housing levy from 3% to 1.5%. What do you think might have led to this and other concessions which were yesterday communicated by the chairperson of the committee?
Thank you very much, Ayub. I look at this concession as a result of the efforts of the public. The public having spoken, the public having made their contribution in terms of submissions, and the opposition also having been on the forefront to make sure that they unpack what is there in the finance bill. That has really given rise to to this concession, and also the issue that the Constitution gives the people the power. That in itself has really worked very well and has made sure that the Finance and Planning Committee had no otherwise other than looking at what the people have said. Yes.
Honorable Morio, was this move by the Finance and National Planning Committee to relook at some of the proposals as contained originally in the finance bill prompted by the public mood?
Thank you very much, Ayub, and also our viewers, and thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to come and ventilate matters of the budget in this forum. And maybe just Ayub, to correct you, my name is Wakili Edward Mureo.
Okay.
I represent the great people of Gatanga constituency.
Thank you.
We have not met, we have not come before you. I mean, I have not get to interview with you, but I think this is a good opportunity. Coming to the question, of course, remember, we have a very vibrant constitution. And one of the provisions of the constitution is that every legislation which will affect the people, it must be subjected to public participation.
Okay.
And the courts have made very, very detailed decisions on that. It cannot be superficial. It cannot be the paint on the skin. It must be seen to the effect that it is the views of the people are being listened to. And that's why you found that the Finance Committee spent about 2 weeks sitting down every day, listening to people and their communication. Again, this is also based on the fact that there is no what we call monopoly of knowledge. The bite makers, the government does not have monopoly of knowledge, and therefore it must also incorporate the ideas of everybody else. And that's why you found things like the housing levy has come down from 3% to 1.5%, because again, FKE have put in their views, COTU have put in their views, Kenyans generally they are putting their views. Therefore, we expect to have an extremely balanced kind of a budget. And secondly, Ayub, appreciate that taxation is always a controversial issue worldwide. And Kenyans, we have reached to a level whereby we are no longer talking about tribes, we're not talking about mundane issues. We are now heading to where developing countries talk about. That is, we are talking about how we can be able to bake a bigger cake, how that cake is going to be distributed, and how that cake how to ensure that whatever revenue we are able to collect is well utilized. And therefore people we are moved on as a country. And for the first time in history, this has never happened. I was talking to my people in Gatanga the other day, and some of them were asking me, and what happened previously? You mean there was no budget before? But surprisingly, currently, because of the conversation of this country have moved, we have developed as a democracy, and that's why you find there's a lot of vibrancy in finance, how that money is going to be used, and also people are watching on how that money is being utilized.
Okay, well, pointing out the revisions made, it's no longer going to be a refundable money now, according to the submissions made here by the chairperson yesterday night, hosted by my colleague Sam Gituku. And then that effectively lifts the capping, which is 5,000 Kenya shillings, meaning now that there will be no uniform application of the 1.5% as now revised by the committee, the Finance and National Planning Committee. Then is it effectively now a tax?
We are yet to make the regulations. Remember, this week and next week, those are purely proposals. And the members of parliament, my colleague here included, we are very vigilant to just interrogate why that has changed. Remember, it's a committee which sat and came up with those issues. And maybe to mention that, remember, first and foremost, I'm a member of parliament. Elected by the people of Gatanga constituency, and therefore I'm their eye and their ear. And therefore my first role is to represent them and make sure that whatever comes on the House, it suits their interests. And therefore, that issue came up with the committee. I also took me aback yesterday. We need to interrogate on why, because the conversation has been, this is a levy, whereby at the end of the time, if you are not able if you don't take a house, that money is refunded to you plus interest. Now, we need to interrogate why that has changed, whether it is maybe is the public who would say that in the public participation, or we need to understand exactly where it came from. Otherwise, initially it was a levy, not a taxation, where that money will go to a kitty, where the employer put his own portion of 1.5, and the employee taking over the portion of 1.5 is put in a superannuation fund, and that money earns interest. Along the way, if you take a house, well and good. If you don't take a house, within 7 years, that money has been.
Which then now effectively, according to the chairperson of the committee, will be non-refundable, meaning it's going to be effectively a tax. Honorable Wangwe, there has been quite hovering over the consolidated funding aspect. Both Charles Hinga and other government officials have said the money will not end up in the consolidated fund, which is properly regulated, because you have to prove the strategic planning, whether there was approval and how that money will be spent, of course, and then the interventions of the Office of the Auditor General and the control of budget. Then does it explain then why we have problems in terms of management of our resources, and the politicians, you included, members of parliament, acknowledging that there has been a problem in terms of the utilization of the funds that Kenyans pay as tax? Do you seek to ask questions as to why there seems to be an appetite for money that is, the Kenya Kwanza administration is largely, for example, like the Hustler Fund had earlier proposed that will not go to the consolidated fund, and now back to consolidated fund. Is it a way of running away from accountability in first proposing this money by not ending up in the consolidated funding? And will you ask those questions to the committee members before Parliament?
Thank you very much, Ayub. I'll respond to it as a user of the consumption of public funds. As the chairperson of PIC, I've gone through the various books of accounts for the various years of various parastatals. And indeed, when you look at the expenditure on how various government agencies are using their monies, it's in a limbo. You can't really be happy. But all said and done, I wish also to respond on the earlier issue of the 1.5 that our colleague shared with us here on TV. I followed the program until the end very late because we got the documents very late in the House and I had not read it. So I wanted to hear from him. And having said that, the funds are now going to go through the consolidated fund, I feel it's just a clever way of responding to the issues that were raised by the public on the structures of the purported fund to be.
Okay.
So to avoid the bureaucracy of establishing the fund, Kenya Kwanza was quick to access to the available pocket and say, let the funds be deposited in the consolidated fund. I feel they were just trying to cross over the bridge quickly. Mm-hmm. But they cross over the bridge quickly with so many challenges. I look at the issue of the 1.5%, and they've removed the cap. The capping has gone.
Which then means there will be no uniform application?
No uniform application. Okay. Looking at it from that angle, I assume the arithmetics and say it is now going to be 1.5, assuming your basic is 100, is 1 million. That's 15,000. Your employer is also going to part with 15,000. So what does it mean in that respect? Or assuming, because we've not seen the document per se, assuming it's half, or 7.5, 7.5. If you do the summation, assuming it's full, for Parliament has to now increase the wage bill by 7 million shillings a month. So if one institution is going to go up by that much, where is SRC going to allow that percentage to come from? So it's an issue which we must look at it and say that is not applicable, because we are going to balloon the wage bill by that difference. So how are we going to, because the employer has to come in. FKE had raised issues with 2,500. Yep. How about 3 times that amount? Definitely, we are going to see a situation where unemployment is going to be the order of the day. So as speaking from where I sit, I wouldn't be able to support this cause as it is now, because the overall effect, the devil is not in the figure 1.5, 3 to 1.5. Yeah. The actual amount which is going to impact on the economy at that figure. That is the whole issue. Okay,
and I'm talking about the concerns over job losses and layoffs that stakeholders have equally communicated to the Finance and National Planning Committee of the National Assembly. And Wakili Murio, when you are in Parliament, your first priority, of course, you are a member of Parliament representing Gatanga constituency, but you are an MP in Parliament in Kenya, and therefore your priority should be around issues that are of concern to the people of Gatanga and as well by extension the people of Kenya. I mean, when we had the 3% proposal in the finance bill and now the revision done by the committee, it clearly points out that the absence in capping means a zigzag way of payment, depending on your monthly income, that is, and the payment that you'll be making to the housing fund. I mean, would this not portend perhaps rough times for employers who might not be able to meet their part of the pie in paying the proposal, the 1.5 now proposed by the committee?
Thank you very much. I think, as my colleague has indicated, this is an issue which was raised yesterday by the chairman of the Finance Committee. And remember, we have twins when it comes to employer and employee who must be taken care of. And one of the things, and secondly, this conversation is right now ripe for members of Parliament to ventilate on, give their views, and discuss it. Okay. And one of the principles which I intend to apply is to ensure, number one, the employee is taken care of, and number two, the employer is also taken care of, because you can't kill the goose which lays the golden egg. There is a challenge. Myself, I'm an employer also, and there's a challenge with the proposal before us, because what will happen eventually is that the employer will disclose a certain amount of money, and not disclose the other certain amount of money. again, to safeguard the two issues. Number one, to reduce the tax payable, and number two, or rather the levy on the amount payable, and number two, also to reduce the load on their end. And that's what we want to avoid. We want to ensure that at least as parliamentarians, as also as representatives of the people, we are able to take care of everybody in such a way that the level, the amount payable does not get to what we call the point of diminishing return. We want number one, to demonstrate value, and number two, to ensure that whatever is being paid is going towards ensuring that there is equitability, and number two, eventually the public will see value. Remember, this conversation about 1.5, and I think Kenyans are more coalesced at that issue, which is a good thing again. But remember, as I said earlier, taxation is always controversial. Nobody wants to pay tax. Worldwide, when it comes to taxation, nobody wants to pay tax. But I think here there are two issues here I want maybe just to put across. Number one, we want to kickstart, and everybody knows that this economy is not doing well. We want to kickstart this economy. We want to spur the growth of our local industries. We want to create employment. That being said, then we need to see how we can be able to balance the two as we create employment, but also sustain our enterprises as we go along. But also on the other hand, Kenyans are also saying that we want to see accountability of this money. Which entity is this money going to be put into? Who is going to be supervising it? And that's why I'm saying this conversation, it is at the level whereby it's being discussed in Parliament. The regulations are going to come in. We expect the superannuation fund to be created and regulation be set out again to ensure that there is transparency in terms of management of these funds. And maybe in a year or two we can start seeing the value of this money, because again, there is no pain, there is no gain without pain. Even in situations whereby you are starting your business, or even whereby one want to get a baby, it comes with pain, but the joy is eventually come over. But I think that he is about we as members of Parliament, we have a very busy week ventilating all these issues, because again we must it's an egg and chicken situation, and chicken and egg situation, whereby we need to balance everything and ensure that we carry everybody through. And I think that's the spirit, to make sure that we carry everybody through, bearing in mind that we have a country to run. Okay.
When you point that out, and there seems to be a pressure on the part of employers, and may I just quote this report by the Economic Survey report in 2023, which said, while the number of residential housing units completed by the State Department for Housing had increased more than threefold to 1,390 units in the same period, it seems there was a proper navigation by the state in undertaking the housing project, which was also a priority for the previous administration. And you still want further funding for the housing project, despite lessening it to 1.5%. What is this sudden crisis that the government has established and needs more funding, yet you have been growing by a good rate, owing to the report as pointed out by the Economic Survey report of 2023? Why do you need the sudden funding again?
Ayub, there's no crisis as such. The housing fund, and I think Kenyans used to understand, is a special fund to spur growth internally. And one of the regulations which I saw in passing is to standardize our construction in such a way that if we are building 1 million houses and it has 5 million doors, those doors are standard and they can be produced locally. And that's what developed countries do to ensure that we don't develop haphazard. Currently, we are developing, maybe for your information, currently, with a 50 million population, do you know we have only maybe about 30,000, 50,000 or thereabout mortgages. It's unbelievable. Sorry, 50,000 mortgages. Unbelievable. Because of the nature of the structure of financing, because remember, the banks give you money which I've already saved. So on my part, I want value for that money. So by the time I give that money, you find that money, but you also as a bank want some interest. Therefore, the affordability in terms of interest hikes. But here is a situation whereby, number one, the land is free. Counties are giving land for free. That's number one. And therefore, and that's why you find that they're going to be a house of $1 million, or maybe about 1.5 and about 2 million shillings. So it's not about a crisis, it's about affordability. And secondly, statistics has also said...
But affordability that you have been doing at a good rate, and you see this is running away from a working program threefold, according to the Economic Survey report. Why the sudden pointer, as the government has projected it, and you need this immediate funding for a project that is already running at a very successful rate?
Remember, maybe I was pointing out to tell you, the same survey has said Kenya, in the next 30 to 50 years, 50%, in the next 25 years, 50% Kenya will be urban. And therefore, time to plan is now. And therefore, with that trend, which we have just mentioned right over there, for us to be able to get where we want to be, there must be acceleration. And remember, we are addressing what you call a macro issue. It's a macro issue. And remember the nature of housing. The nature of housing is that there is, even with that kind of the statistic, we need a job whereby we come up with a fund, put in the housing in such a way that everybody in the course of the construction gets a job. The other day, I remember the members of the engineering association, architect association, the quality surveyors association, lawyers were asking the question. But remember, the professionals who at one time I saw in the media, they were just saying opposing the housing bill, are the immediate beneficiaries. These properties need to be transferred. Lawyers have work to do. Okay. The engineers need to do the engineering work. They have work to do. Architects have work the drawing to do. They have work to do. QS have work to do, assess the water. So okay. We are triggering what you call a pendulum effect in the economy.
Thank you. Honorable Wangwe, yes. Talking about this, and the government needs money, which is right, because you have to run a government and you have to run a country, and it's the people of Kenya who pay the tax. But Kenyans aren't under tax either. They have been paying the part of the portion since independence. Kenya became an independent state, depending on, of course, the appreciation of the Kenya shilling 60 years down the line. It's you, the policymakers, members of parliament included, who have failed the Kenyan people in the utilization of the funding that they have contributed to the kitty to get good roads, to get education, to get health care, to get services. And it's not commensurate to what they are paying. And therefore, how would you responsibly play your role as a member of parliament? And what percentage will the opposition take? Because you, members of the opposition, are also part of government in the sense that you serve in the legislature. So how will you also take up that responsibility of ensuring that there is value for the money the Kenyan people pay as tax?
Thank you. It is very true that there has been very little value for money. Comparing what the Kenyan taxpayers, Kenyans are paying as tax, vis-a-vis the oversight that we give to them. And when you look at, my feeling could be that we need to improve in terms of two things. One, during the budget making process, we actually need to scrutinize the various vote heads that go to various ministries. Let's not just approve the funds to that ministry, simply because we have been given, the budget has come from the executive, so that we just pass as it is. Let's not do it that way. Let's be given room to interrogate the budget. Let's look at where are we sending the money. Is there a need for that money? Is there likely to get return on that by putting there that money? Let's have that thorough view of the budget. The worst part of it also, which is making us lose a lot, is the expenditure part of it. Where are the instruments of watchdog committees, where myself I am one of them? Having gone through a few agencies, I wish to put it that the dilemma happens to have been resolved in the last parliament, especially on the very many parastatals that we have in the country. We only used to have one PIC. Today, we have 3 public investment committees, so that you can effectively oversight the review of accounts of various entities to the latest. Trust me, Ayub, I'm going through accounts of various agencies dating back to 2008, 2012. When issues happened, the money is lost. Even some of the CEOs, God forbid, they've been invited by the angels. They are not with us. So how do we follow such issues? One thing that I would recommend is to push as quick as possible to align with the audit periods, so that when the auditor is picking up issues which are real, that this money has been misappropriated here, let the watchdog committee also conclude the investigation immediately and hand over to the right agencies. If it's DCI, if it's ESCC, let now the right agencies with the right instruments of investigation handle when the CEOs of various agencies are still in the office. But this issue that has been happening, where you chase after a very nice person, very good witness, and he's gone, is an issue that we've let the Kenyan people down.
Okay.
Having said that, and coming back to the budget.
Okay, before you proceed with the budget, we'll talk about the contents of what will be tabled tomorrow by Professor Njuguna Ndung'u. You have mentioned, earlier on you talked about the housing fund.
Yes.
And it's equally a proposal that you had in your manifesto launched on the 4th of June last year when you sought the mandate of the Kenyan people. And I want to understand, were you to assume the mandate, were you to get the mandate of the Kenyan people and assume authority for the purpose of this debate, now that it's to less than 1.5%, as the committee chairperson yesterday said here on Citizen TV, how would you have undertaken the implementation of what you proposed if you were in power?
Thank you very much. Looking at the manifesto of the Azimio, the 1.5 implementation was to be put into an independent fund, not really to go through the consolidated fund. It was not to be a tax per se. It was to exist on its own. And if we were to be in government today, the 1.5% fund was supposed to apply across the board to all the benefit of the 1.5% was to come in the implementation, not really in the collection part of it, such that the selected areas or regions across the country which have been disadvantaged in terms of infrastructure were to be the main beneficiaries of the fund. So we could collect the resources, put together as a pool, but in terms of administration, it was supposed to target the areas that have been really left behind.
Okay. But what's the difference here? Because I'm trying to draw distinction, and there seems to be no dichotomy. Yeah. It's the same as what the Kenya Kwanza administration is proposing, that it's not going to be in the consolidated fund. Just last night was when the chairperson said it will end up there. There seems to be you and Honorable Edward Murio Wakili and Azimio and Kenya Kwanza appear to be singing from the same hymn sheet. And it's more or less the same.
It's a bit different.
Okay. What's the difference?
They've gone for the levy. As we are not going to put it as a tax.
They said it's not a tax.
The way they put it is now a tax. It's now a tax.
Because it's in the consolidated fund.
Yes.
But earlier they said it's not a tax.
Yes.
So what is the other standing out difference you would point out were you to implement that 1.5 as you proposed?
One thing that was to come out very clear was the structures first. How they were rushing it is the difference also. The structures, we were to begin with the structures, create the fund, respect the PFM Act, incorporate the fund properly, and then allow the public to participate into it and accept that this fund is their own fund. So that was the difference. Then they put to us the fund before the structures, as we were to lay the structures before the fund.
Okay, we'll talk about more and the need to curb financial leakages in the country. Honorable Edward Wakili Moreo and Emmanuel Wangwe after the break here on the broadcast. And the VAT also from 8 to 16% as proposed. It never changed as contained in the Finance Bill 2023, in which the chairperson said this will help the country earn about total, that is the entire bill, 130 billion Kenya shillings in additional revenue to finance the 3.6 trillion budget for the financial year 2023-2024, the first for President William Ruto's government starting the 1st of July next month. This is Daybreak. The hashtag on Twitter is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir and at Safin_Cheng. We are back with more after the break. Stay tuned.